Joanie, so good to see you again. Excited about diving into a new line that y'all have with Just Thrive, relatively new. Yeah, I've worked with y'all for years. Y'all were one of the very first probiotic companies that I came across and found and fell in love with, and I've seen how the spore-based have that made a massive impact for people. But one thing on the digestive bitters that I really wanted to get a better understanding and be able to share that with people is I'm seeing some things on the liver and gallbladder side that I want your help to kind of dive through as we work with what in the world is a digestive bitter, and we'll get into a little bit more of the deepers. But if you will, give us that little quick intro to who you are and why you love Just Thrive.
Well, I'm the national educator, and I have been with Just Thrive about 8 years now. And really, I think the company had to offer me that position because they could not get me to shut up about how much I loved all the products, in particular, how much the spore-based probiotic revolutionized my life because I have had gut issues. I can remember 8 years old is when it started. So, yeah, my whole life. And it's funny because this spore-based probiotic is the very first product that we introduced. And the most recent product that we're going to talk about today is the bitters, but they're absolutely like this in terms of how well they work together.
Yeah, Kieran has been heavily involved with y'all. He's been on the podcast a couple times, and it's really fascinating as we see the microbiome. I think that it's a conversation. So, like, before we get into here, so a lot of those that follow me don't lose their mind. I'm pretty much a non-supplement person. Honestly, I think that we gotta get that foundation, that environment right. But I think that without question, we have a really toxic artificial environment that we live in, and there are times that tools are absolutely necessary. And so, like with that, I think that the digestive bitters are one of those things that helps snowball that getting back on the right track, getting healthy. And so let's go into that first layer of what is a digestive bitter, and why is this something that's been brought to market?
Well, let me just go back just a little and then we'll do that one too, which is that I do want to say that our food system has been so corrupted that there are three different aspects of it that you will never be able to get enough just by eating food. The first is we hate bacteria, so we have essentially sterilized bacteria out of all of our agricultural growing and food processing practices. And that includes these very important spore based protective ones. The second is prebiotics. We have been hybridizing fiber out of all of our crops really since about the mid 1800s. And so at this point, they estimate that 95% of us are chronically fiber deficient. And it's not like you can just necessarily go down to the supermarket and easily get fiber rich foods. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And then third is the bitters because, our ancestors, way, way back, all the food that they ate was very, very bitter. It was naturally loaded with lots of bitter compounds. And so our biology evolved to match our diet. And we used to think that most of our bitter receptors were on our tongue because we could taste it so much. And I remember being taught that, all digestion starts in the mouth. And now I understand from Kieran that while that is true, it's only partially true. That we do have quite a few receptor sites for those bitter compounds, and that's what enables us to taste it. But it turns out that actually the majority of those nerve sites that are designed to combine with those bitter bioactives, the majority of them are in our stomach and small intestine. And that actually only makes sense when you think about how it is that our biology evolved and what our ancestors did, which is that they ate their bitter compounds. They didn't drink them. And the thing is when you drink it, it makes the taste much stronger. And those sites evolved really to protect us from drinking contaminated water. Because and that's why we get such a strong immediate gag reflex, and some of us are more sensitive than others. It's your brain saying, "Oh, it might be poisonous." But our ancestors, for the most part, got the majority of their bitters just by eating them. And so that is the thinking around how that's why the majority of those nerve sites are in the stomach and small intestine. And then the additional newer science is that they have found that these bitter nerve sites, which are designed specifically to combine with bitter bioactives, turns out we have millions and millions of them, and they're all over the body. Most of them are in the stomach and small intestine. Most of them are very specific to stimulating a whole series of digestive processes. But now knowing that we have these nerve sites in our brain, our nasal passages, our lungs, our heart, many areas and organs that are not specifically linked to digestive processes. Now the science is leaning towards the idea that the function of these sites kind of starts with being kicked off by getting digestion being very effectively flowing, but that digestion is always linked to brain, neurological, cognitive, and mood issues, also metabolic issues. And there's a lot of talk in the industry these days about metabolic benefits. Um, And, what I am starting to understand is at least for me, every time I hear that buzzword metabolic, in my mind, I'm replacing that with, the concept of my overall bodily inflammatory load. And the reason is, 20 years ago, 15 years ago in our industry, that's what people used to talk about all the time, that having a high bodily inflammatory load was what precedes most conditions. And so the question became, well, how do we reduce that bodily inflammatory load? And as we began to understand what it means to have a leaky gut and what it means to have a healthy population of bacteria living in the gut, we began to understand that having a damaged gut wall and toxins leaking into the bloodstream could very well be a primary driver behind having a very high bodily inflammatory load. And now, with this new science on the bitters and locating these receptor sites in other parts of the body, they're starting to look at that also affecting that whole process. It's very exciting.
Yeah, it is. You without going on too big of a tangent, the what makes it really interesting that you have said that these receptors are there is that we also know that we have opsins throughout the body like that, right? And these are light detecting
What? We have
proteins.
what? I didn't quite catch.
Opsins,
Uh,
opsins. Yeah. So like melanopsin, for example, this is a blue light detector that we have in our body. And so like one thing that I really hope that the microbiome world gets caught up on is that bacteria are actually producing light. And that anytime that we have a lack of coherence within the system, we have that word, that chaos and inflammation. They're synonymous. And so when we are, that goes back to what I was saying right there at the very beginning about the environment we live in. We are out of sync with nature. So like you brought up the bitters, and so ancestry speaking, especially for like a temperate climate, right? So like I'm in Arkansas, so we have winters, right, and we have springs, and so like springs are where we would have had that highest level of ingestion. And then if you disagree with anything, y'all just you tell me. And so like in spring, we're getting a lot of bitters, right? We're eating a lot of things that are sprouting, and they're coming up for us. You know, you have your dandelions, you have some burdock, you have different things that are going to have these compounds in there, and that's going to stimulate a signal, right? And I really think that we have a biophysics piece in there with you look at the emission and absorption spectrum of all of the bitters. And I think that is honestly, if we just keep going layer and layer and layer and layer to what you're talking about, that's where we're going to end up at is understanding what's happening on that piece. But what I'm so excited about is that in working with some people as we get the light right, you know, we're getting up in the mornings, we're getting this solar input from the sunrise out in the sun, getting the full spectrums, infrared, UVA, UVB. Um, Lives are just changing, right? And that's free too. That's another thing I'm super excited about. But what I keep seeing over and over and over is that inflammation part that you're talking about. And then we've got some major, not only gut dysbiosis, but some liver issues that are massive, right? Like unbelievably big. And
Yeah.
so, like, what I am so excited about on the bitters things is it seems to be a pretty low barrier to entry to stimulate really positives in liver function, right? Thinning the bile, getting it least. I've had people saying that they're passing gallstones like crazy. Just little things that you hear with like a TUDCA or some other bile salt. So, like, I'll go into the bitters as a dietary component that we're missing and why a supplement can be a bridge in that omission of our diets.
Mhm. So, as I said, we've been hybridizing bitter flavors and bitter bioactives out of our crops and foods for well over 100 years, like 150 years. So, our standard American diet is very low in bitter components. And meanwhile, we have millions of these nerve sites throughout the body that are coded specifically to combine with them. And the reason we have them is because when that bitter bioactive sits on that nerve site, that nerve begins to send a message to the rest of the body. Hey, get ready for food. Food's coming. And so it jumpstarts a whole series of digestive processes. You start to make more stomach acidity. You start to make digestive enzymes like lipase, like protein, protease. The intestines begin to contract because you need to have that food moving through. The stomach is also contracting in order to get gastric emptying happening. So, you know, initially it looks like it's just a digestive product, but what the science is showing us is that digestion is what kickstarts a whole bunch of other processes as well. So we eat the bitters, they hop on the nerve site for very quickly for just a few minutes. That nerve site is saying, okay, start up all these digestive processes. We want more stomach acid, we want more digestive enzymes, blah blah blah. That all happens in a whole series because we keep eating the food. But as soon as those processes are activated, it next sends a message to the brain for the body to naturally make GLP-1, which you can call it either a peptide or a hormone. It can be interchangeable terms. But the basic idea is within a minute or two of that nerve site getting activated, the GLP-1 now shows up, bumps off the bitter bioactive, nestles on the site, and now that nerve site sends out the opposite message. It's telling the body to slow digestion down. And the reason for that is because if food passes through your intestines too quickly, you're not going to be able to absorb your nutrients well. So You speed up, you activate, you're hungry, and then, oh, okay, now hunger's dropping off. I can slow down. I'm not eating so fast. And that way you get peak absorption of your nutrients. But, that GLP-1 hormone is designed by your body only to stay on that nerve site for 2, maybe 3 minutes. And then it leaves, right? Because you've got this stimulation and then slow down. It's stimulation and slow down. It's happening in millions of sites. And we wind up getting peak engagement with the naturally produced GLP-1 hormone in about a half hour, which not surprisingly is about the length of your average meal. So that's how long it takes to go through the activation, the hunger, getting things going, moving, and then, okay, now we can slow it down. We're going to absorb our nutrients better. Oh, okay, now I've gotten to the end of my meal. I feel satisfied. I'm energized. I'm ready to go back to work. So that's the way it's supposed to be working. And when we don't get enough of these bitters, bioactives, and we don't get enough of that activation, we wind up with sluggish digestion. And we know there was a study done recently. Let me see if I can remember the numbers here. I think it was over 72,000 Americans. And in the survey, something like 61% of them said that at least one time during the previous week, they had various gastric problems, anything from gas, bloating, heartburn, anything, all those kinds of typical common gastric troubles. So, we it's not surprising that so many Americans are looking for help with digestion, and bitters is a part of it. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, there's so many layers there, Joni, right? Like, it's so because what you're also getting into is leptin and adiponectin. We're talking about peristalsis and a lack of semiconductors, electromagnetic waves that are going through, right? And so, like, what I have seen again, I think that it goes back to again what I said at the very beginning. It's that environment that we live in is the reason that we have those problems and need some other things, right? So, like, when we go back to the ancestrally speaking, we're talking about hunters and gatherers. They were out hunting and gathering in the wild, outside, right? Like, we don't
Yeah,
experience that. So, like,
right.
it
Yeah.
wasn't simply that they were eating bitters, it was that they were outside, they were moving, they were in the sun, they were grounded, they were breathing in terpenes and other phytochemicals. Like, there's so much to this entire thing, and so, I think that the the worse of a lifestyle somebody has, the more something like this is going to have to be used. I really do, and I think that whether that is going to be, like, again, kicking off that snowball to get it rolling, but, like, the what Johnny, why is it so hard to get people to realize that the way that we're living is what's causing the problem? Like, I know it's so easy to try to blame, agriculture, and that's my world, right? I own a farmer's market. Like, I am in agriculture, right? That's my entire world is local food systems, and, uh but I get people that have these deer in the headlights look when I say, "Yeah, staying on that phone till midnight with that blue light blasting in your eyes and destroying your visual photoreceptors and your melatonin is actually what's causing this cascade of a disaster that's going on. The sun never seeing the POMC receptors in your stomach is why your digestion is an absolute catastrophe." And so, like, what I am saying is that the bitters, when you look at them, a lot of them have an emission absorption spectrum in the UV range that help line out everything that I'm saying. Like, I'm supporting y'all is what I'm actually doing. Is like, this is going on a biophysics piece on what it's doing that, and it's needed because we're living a really bad lifestyle.
Yeah, we have just interrupted everything about the way we're supposed to be living. And people give you that deer in headlights version because it's like, well, I got to pay the rent, and my job demands that I sit there in front of that computer until 9 o'clock at night. I mean, so many hard choices, as you know. Um, which is why, at least for me, the way I prioritize it is I try to get those 3 things that I listed earlier. None of us get enough of the spore probiotics. We need those because their job is to go down, and their job is not to seed our gut like the Lactobacillus and Bifidobacterium. Their job is actually to provide support to the 30 to 100 trillion permanent inhabitants down there. So, and we don't get enough of them through food. We don't get enough prebiotics. We don't get enough bitters. And then from there, that's my foundation personally. And then from there, yeah, man, I've got my blue blockers on at night. I, I stop, I get out of the front of the laptop by 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Um, Yeah, so many things. I try to get outside every day. I can't I One of the things that I've really learned from the research microbiologist formulator for Just Thrive is how important it is to get outside. And of course, it's the natural light, and I had no idea how much we breathe in very important bacteria just by getting outside. Get in the sunlight, breathe in the air, put your hands in the dirt, put your feet on the ground in the dirt, absorb those bacteria through your skin. I was told once that there was a program for vets with PTSD to set them up with farming programs, because one of the things they figured out is that it would help their stress level by getting their hands in the dirt. And now they understand that that has a lot to do with the bacteria, the healthy bacteria that you need. You not only need to eat them, you need them on your skin. You need to breathe them in the air. Mother Nature has everything.
Everything, yes. No, I love that. Um, you it kinda hits on that everything that we've done has gotten further and further away from God's design, and then there's gonna be consequences, right? So every time that we break it, you talked about, farming methods and sanitizing everything and hybridization and things. It's like every time we take a step further away, we seem to have a consequence, and then now we get to try to come up with a solution or just kinda maybe look back in the mirror a little bit too would be a better way.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And I have to say, I was really shocked by the kinds of benefits that I got when I started on the bitters, which is that the whole previous year, I had been experiencing increasing levels of arthritis. And it was embarrassing because, I'm an educator for a supplements company. And here I am having trouble getting up and down the steps and picking up my grandchild. And was like, wow, I know this has to do with inflammation. What's going on? And when I started on the bitters, there were two things that I noticed immediately. One was it was coincidental that I had just gotten what I think was a version of the norovirus because I got exposed through my grandchild. But I got a very mild version of it compared to what other people were saying they got. And the way it would just show up for me would be I would get this wave of nausea, and I happened to have just received my first bottle of the bitters. Every time I took a dose, the nausea would settle down. I was so grateful I had, and then I'd go, I'm all better. Look. And I'd go back to eating regularly. And then it'd be like, oh no, I'm not done with the norovirus yet. But I was so thrilled that every time I took a dose, it would very quickly address the nausea. And I started thinking, oh my gosh, somebody who gets any kind of travel sickness, this would be a great boon for them. And it also dawned on me, um, we have been distilling alcohol with bitters in it for centuries. You can drink more alcohol without getting nauseated, right? So many, many ways to use it that way, very easy. And then the other thing was, after I'd been on it for about a month, I noticed a huge drop in the soreness, and I have scoliosis, so I get a lot of pain on my lower back. So much of that arthritic pain was just gone, gone, gone. And I was very distrustful of that. I didn't want to assume that taking that product would lead to that result because, in my mind, I'm still thinking it's a digestive aid. And so when I talked to Karen about it, I said, "Is that common? Does that I don't understand." And he said, "Oh, that's a great example of a metabolic benefit from taking a bitters product." So in other words, the appropriate stimulation of these nerve sites that need to get activated can support metabolic processes like a reduction in those arthritic type flare-ups I was getting.
So, Joni, I want to hit on the nausea first. One thing that I have seen, I'm curious if you've come across anything, is I'm thinking there may be some potential positives with chemotherapy and the nausea. So I've got a lot of people, cancer's my entire world, right? And I have so many people that are asking questions and just seeking guidance. Really one of the major things that we have are cannabinoids, right? Like that's kind of the go-to within cancer treatments is to try to deal with that. And so but I want your answer, but what I think we may, and again, I know I'm becoming a sun maximalist, honestly, because I think all the solutions are going to be go back to that foundation. But when you look at that POMC gene, and then we get into what's called beta endorphins and metenkephalin, those two things actually have it's an opioid, it's an endogenously produced opioid and endocannabinoid, right? And so like that has all of those immune modulating and pain receptor effects. Like we're not in the sun and we don't have it. That's why a lot of these things work. So with that utilizing within kind of these extreme situations, right? A cancer treatment or something. Have you seen anything that is potential for hope? Because it seems to make a lot of sense, especially after your anecdotal story on the norovirus and nausea.
Don't have any data on that. I would have to ask Karen, but I'd be very interested to hear somebody's results using the bitters with chemo nausea. It only kind of makes sense, you
Makes
know.
too much sense, honestly.
Yeah.
So there was another aspect I really want to get your take with. Johnny, I'm gonna be honest. I struggle really, really hard on the whole alternative health world because so often what I've seen is it's all about selling, selling, selling supplements, supplements, supplements. And I have people come to me over and over and over on thousands of dollars a month in supplements. They've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on functional medicine doctors and all the tests you can imagine, and they're not better. They're not. And so like I take it very, 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 very seriously if I'm going to recommend a product ever. And I actually, and this may make me a butt sometimes, but I actually want to pick it apart first before I recommend it. Like I don't want to believe it first. Like I want to come in as a
Good.
skeptic and
That's good.
divide it into these pieces that I can either support it or I can pick it apart, right? And so with that said, I have seen the spore-based probiotics change people's lives, like firsthand for years, right? I have seen these digestive bitters, although relatively new in my experience, massive, massive, massive impact. So for that, there's another round that I think it's all environmental based on the reason that we have an epidemic, but pretend like it's not. Are parasites. I think that is a big, big deal. I really, really, really do. And the reason that I know it is because in the cancer research, I'm huge in ivermectin and fenbendazole. Right, these are antiparasitic drugs. They absolutely have efficacy within treating cancer. I don't want people to think they go Tractor Supply and cure cancer, but as far as utilizing certain modalities and treatments within a cancer, I think they have a role. People are passing parasites like crazy when we do this. Like that's the thing. Like we're seeing it. It's like it's not that we don't have parasites. Like I'm literally seeing pictures of what people are saying. What is this? accidentally, and we talked about this before we recorded the other day, uh, got a person on a protocol that started with just some TUDCA. They don't have a gallbladder, a little diatomaceous earth, and then liver flukes started coming out like crazy. Like I'm talking hundreds of liver flukes. Okay. So the digestive bitters were added with the TUDCA and the diatomaceous earth. Okay. Um, so go on a little bit more parasite. Threadworms start coming out. Hundreds of these little worm sacs of threadworms. Okay. All right. So then continue on the same protocol, actually added a parasite cleanse, a parasite kit with this, continue the digestive bitters, gallstones by the hundreds start coming out. And so again, no gallbladder. So these were had to have been coming out of the liver. So losing massive amounts of liver flukes, thinning the bile, reducing the inflammation, creating more of coherence within the liver and the system as a whole is allowing for the gallstones to move and to be passed. And I'm talking hundreds over the course of about 4 or 5 days, like every time. When we rid from these toxins, and I think the reason for a parasitic overload is it goes into diet, it goes into the environment, it goes into the lack of electromagnetic membrane potential, right? Redox. So, Joni, the bitters played a role in one of the largest expelling of parasites I have ever seen, and I've seen a lot of them. So this is like the catalyst for why we got on the phone. I said, "Hey, I want to know what y'all are experiencing on the parasite topic, on this liver topic, because to me, it's done something that other things have not on as a standalone basis."
So this is not an area that I know much about. Okay, so my understanding is that our natural greatest defense against parasites is our immune system. And if the immune system is functioning at peak level, it's going to keep parasites under control. And to me, the most supportive product that I've found for my immune system has been the spore-based probiotic. Okay. And the reason simply being because like 75-80% of our immune receptor sites are embedded in our intestinal tissue. The job of those immune receptor sites is it's kind of like radar for our body. So those sites are always looking for possible invaders, harmful invaders. And when those receptor sites spot an invader, it sends a message to your immune system to produce antibodies to go down and deal with it. So if that intestinal tissue gets inflamed and damaged, then those receptors, those immune receptor sites are not going to be able, it's like they fall asleep at the wheel. They don't see the invader. Then they finally wake up. They notice the invader. They send the message to the immune system. And now the immune system overreacts and you get the cytokine storm. So that's why a dysfunctional immune system will both underperform and overperform. Okay. So if that whole system down there is looking good and the tissue's looking good because you've got a healthy balance of bacteria down there and you don't have an overgrowth of the kind that are producing toxins, your immune system's going to be in good shape and it'll be able to see a parasite coming in and say, oh, got to get rid of that parasite. Um, the bitters, in my understanding, are some pretty strong herbs. They are designed specifically to have these strong bioactives in them. There's 12 different ones in that formula, and I know that each one of them was chosen based on not only the newest science and all this stuff, but also because if you look at the I'll send it to you so you have it. Um, every single herb is targeting a different aspect of the digestive process, and there's dozens and dozens. It's like a relay system, starting in the mouth, but it goes all the way through. And every single herb is targeting a slightly different aspect of that very complicated process. So it's a very, very comprehensive and complete formula. But the other thing is, it's not in a liquid form, and that's on purpose. And that's because since we know that the majority of those bitters receptor sites are in the stomach and small intestine, a capsule is a much more effective delivery system to get it down there where the majority of those sites are. So I don't know if that has something to do with the kind of efficacy that you're referring to, but I do think a very strong formula of very strong herbs in a capsule form is the way to go.
It's doing something. The the immune system topic, that's a big one, right? Because we have actually, and I didn't realize this until relatively recently, more T regulator cells in the skin than we even do in the intestines, and I think that's kind of fascinating, right? It goes back into everything else we've talked previously. Um, w- you an example in alternative cancer world, bitter melon is used pretty extensively, right? And that is in these bitter formulas. So, do you have
Yes.
anything to add on that one specifically?
No, I'm not. I've done bitter melon myself on occasion, but Kieran would really be able to address that specifically, I think, much more appropriately. But it we call it the digestive dozen for a reason because each one of them is doing something different.
No, it's a incredible formula. So there's uh there's a lot of people that have been helped by Just Thrive, and I definitely sing y'all's praises. And if you will see my health food or my supplement wall at the market, it keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And the oldest one, the one that's still up there on the shelves, is Just Thrive. So like I am a huge proponent. Although I'm hypercritical of the supplement industry as a whole, an alternative health space. Like to me, it's not really that much different than allopathic medicine. Um, but you, we got a lot of people that are hurting. We got a lot of people that are suffering, and just when we watch people get bled dry financially and from their energy and everything, I just never sets well with me. So, Just Thrive has my praises and my support. I love what y'all stand for and what y'all do. I just think we've got to always hit on that foundation, right? Like no supplement is the solution for a bad lifestyle. None.
Yeah, I really find the probiotic and the bitters to work really very well together because the bitters are targeting the stomach and small intestine, so the first third of your digestive tract. The spore-based bacteria, they really function in the large bowel. That's their home. That's where they really go to work. And most of the bacteria on the inside of the body, we're not talking the outside, but on the inside, most of them are located in the large bowel. Um, the large bowel has about 9 or 10 times more bacteria than the small intestine does. And the spores, that's where they go down and they like, I always think of them as kind of like, I don't know, super soldiers or something. It's like Mother Nature's super soldiers because you don't have to feed them anything special. They arrive 100% alive. They open up that shell, they find food, and they digest that food and convert it into two different kinds of byproducts. And this is what they've done for us for eons, right? So I think of them as like having a bag on either side, and one bag says good guys, and the other bag says bad guys. And they're looking around the gut because they're not designed to live in our gut. They're designed to help the bacteria that do live there. So they're looking around and they say, oh, look, there's a good guy, but we don't have enough. So they literally use that self-produced compound that they make naturally like fertilizer. And they have the ability to move, unlike the other trillions of inhabitants. And they scooch over next to it and they feed it, and it grows and grows. And they go, oh, that's the perfect level. That's good. We want you right there. And then they just turn that off and they start to look around the gut again. And now they say, oh, look, there's a bad guy over there. Oh, we got to get it. So they reach in the other bag and they scooch over next to it. Bang, they hit it. And now you're opening up territory. So these beneficials that they're increasing over here, they have some place to move to. And it's just everything gets exponentially better and better. Once you begin to get enough of these guys in the gut. And the area that they primarily do most of that work is the large bowel. So I love the combination because the bitters are functioning mostly in the first part of my digestive tract, and then the spore bacillus are getting things all settled and happy in my large bowel.
I love it, my friend. Joni, there's so much more that we can go into. I need to follow back up with Kieran and do a, a follow up. It'd be really important. Just if you look at the history of the microbiome research, it's really not that old either in the grand scheme of things. It's like it's crazy where we are, just how much more we've got to learn too. So that's exciting. It's really exciting. So, is there anything else you want to hit on before we wrap up?
Um, we just came out with this new 3-month size, which for me is a big blessing because I really like to do 2 caps with every single time I eat food. So the savings on the larger size is appreciated for that reason. But yeah, it's the
I-
same contents.
Is there any benefit, do you think, to opening a capsule and say, putting it in the tongue?
Yeah, I do that every time. I put a little bit on my tongue and mix it up with my saliva. The goal is to make sure I taste it really strongly because those receptor sites on the tongue, they do send the message to the body to increase a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit of stomach acidity. What else does it do? It does one other small part of the process. So I get that going on the tongue, and then I just pop the 2 caps in and swallow it down with food.
Fantastic.
Yeah, easy
Fantastic.
peasy.
Joni, thank you for your time. Thank you for your passion and just you've been a blessing, my friend. So thank you.
Likewise, really always good to see you, Logan.
All right.